That's what the arrogant CEO laughed as he mocked the quiet cleaning lady in front of everyone. What he didn't know was that the woman holding the mop once commanded fighter jets. When she finally stepped into that helicopter, the truth that followed left the entire company, and him, speechless. The laughter still echoed through the glass hangar long after David's words faded. For most of the staff, it was just another morning at Skyfleet Aviation. But for Sophia, it was a quiet reminder of how cruel people could be when they thought you were beneath them. She stood still for a moment, the mop still in her hands, the scent of cleaning polish mixing with the faint aroma of aviation fuel. Her eyes stayed lowered, but inside her mind was steady and calm. Like the silent hum before an engine starts, David Carter, the billionaire CEO of Skyfleet, strutted across the hangar floor in his tailored suit, proudly explaining every detail of his new helicopter to the investors. His voice carried confidence, almost arrogance, as he pointed out the design, the speed, the innovation, everything except humility. The investors nodded, pretending to be impressed, though their eyes wandered more toward his wealth than his words. Sophia, meanwhile, moved silently behind them, collecting a discarded coffee cup that one of the guests had left on a workbench. She didn't seem bothered by the earlier humiliation. Her movements were graceful, measured, the kind that come from discipline, not defeat. But her silence made David uneasy. He had expected her to blush, to stumble, to be embarrassed enough to run away. Instead, she simply kept working, which somehow made him feel like he had lost control of the moment. As they walked past the helicopter again, David turned to make one last joke for his audience. "She's a tough one, isn't she?" he said, flashing a confident grin. Didn't even deny it. Maybe she's secretly applying for a pilot's job. The investors laughed again, but the sound didn't reach Sophia's heart. She just straightened a stack of cleaning cloths and whispered under her breath, "People who think they've reached the sky often forget who built the runway." Later that afternoon, the gossip began to spread through the building like wildfire. The office staff joked about the proposal between the CEO and the cleaning lady. Some found it funny, others pitied her. The security guards chuckled about it in the break room, replaying the moment with exaggerated gestures. But one person didn't laugh. Emma Lewis, David's personal assistant. She had seen the whole thing from behind the crowd, and the sight of Sophia's calm face after being mocked stayed with her all day. Emma found Sophia in the maintenance corridor, quietly rinsing her mop bucket. "Hey, about this morning," she said softly, her voice hesitant. "I'm sorry. You didn't deserve that." Sophia looked up, her expression warm but unreadable. "It's all right," she replied. "People often test others to see how high they can stand. I just prefer to stay grounded." Emma was taken aback by her composure. There was something about Sophia's tone, not wounded but wise, that didn't fit the picture of a simple cleaning lady. Meanwhile, David sat in his sleek glass office overlooking the airfield. He was still chuckling about the morning's incident, proud of how he'd entertained his investors. In his mind, it was harmless fun, another story for the next board meeting. He didn't notice that some employees had stopped laughing when he walked by. He didn't care that Sophia's dignity had quietly silenced his arrogance in the eyes of those who respected hard work more than wealth. As the sun began to set, Sophia finished her shift and stepped outside the hangar. The sky above Skyfleet burned orange and gold, the helicopters glinting like giant dragonflies resting for the night. She stood there for a long time, her eyes fixed on one of the aircrafts, the very one David had mocked her about. She traced its outline against the horizon and smiled faintly, as though greeting an old friend. No one knew that years ago she had flown machines far more powerful than this, that her hands had once held controls that guided rescue teams through lightning storms and combat zones. But she had buried that part of her life after losing someone dear, choosing peace over pride. To the world, she was a cleaner. To herself, she was a survivor. Inside the building, Emma watched her through the window, a thoughtful look crossing her face. Something about Sophia didn't add up, and Emma's curiosity began to stir. Who was this woman who accepted humiliation with such grace? Why did she move like someone who had known command? As the lights in the hangar dimmed and the night swallowed the glass building, Sophia walked away quietly, her reflection disappearing into the darkness. The laughter from that morning had faded, but its echo lingered in the air, a promise of something unexpected yet to come. Because while David believed the day had ended with a joke, it had really just begun a story that would soon turn his world upside down. Days passed, but the laughter from that morning refused to fade. Every corridor of Skyfleet Aviation seemed to carry echoes of the CEO's cruel bet. The cleaning crew whispered about it during their breaks, half in disbelief, half in amusement. But as the gossip spread, it began to twist into something else: curiosity. The same people who laughed started to wonder about the quiet woman who never raised her voice, never argued, and yet somehow carried herself with the confidence of someone far more than a cleaning lady. In the small staff room behind the maintenance area, two janitors talked over lukewarm coffee. "You know what's strange?" one said, lowering his voice. "I saw her last week in the break room reading a technical manual, something about rotor dynamics and flight stability. Who reads that stuff for fun?" The other chuckled uneasily. "Maybe she just likes planes. We work in an aviation company after all." But the first one shook his head. "No, man, she wasn't reading like someone trying to understand. She was reviewing, like she already knew it all." Emma Lewis overheard bits of that conversation while walking by. She tried to ignore it at first, but something about Sophia's calm eyes the other day had stayed with her. There was a quiet strength in that woman, something measured and disciplined. Emma decided to check her employee file out of simple curiosity. But when she opened the database, she found almost nothing. No employment history, no reference letters, just a short note saying, "Background verified." Cleared for hire. It was odd. Skyfleet ran background checks on everyone, yet Sophia's past seemed sealed shut. That night, curiosity got the better of Emma. She searched online, typing the name Sophia Miller into an old database linked to aviation training programs. Dozens of results appeared, but one name stopped her cold: Captain Sophia Miller, U.S. Air Force pilot, awarded for bravery in an overseas rescue mission. Emma's eyes widened as she scrolled through the article. The photo showed a younger Sophia in uniform standing beside a helicopter, her eyes sharp and focused. The headline read, "Pilot risks her life to save stranded soldiers in combat zone." The woman who had been mocked for holding a mop had once commanded a team of aviators in life-or-death skies. Emma leaned back in her chair, stunned. Everything suddenly made sense. The poise, the silence, the way Sophia moved around the aircraft as if she understood its soul. But one question burned in her mind. Why was someone like her cleaning floors in a corporate hangar? The next day, she waited for Sophia near the staff entrance. When Sophia appeared, dressed in her plain uniform, Emma hesitated before speaking. "I found something," she said quietly. Sophia paused, looking at her with calm curiosity. "You were a pilot," Emma continued. "A decorated one." Sophia didn't seem shocked that her secret was out. She simply looked at the ground for a moment, then met Emma's eyes and said softly, "Some wings are meant to stay folded." The words carried both pain and peace, like a wound that had long healed but still remembered its ache. Emma didn't push further, sensing the weight behind that answer. But as she watched Sophia walk away, she felt a strange mixture of awe and sadness. The world had forgotten a hero, and that hero had chosen silence. While Emma wrestled with her discovery, David Carter was preparing for his grandest event yet, a media showcase for Skyfleet's latest helicopter model, the very same one he had boasted about when he mocked Sophia. Reporters, investors, and high-profile guests were invited to witness the unveiling of the future of aviation. For David, it was another chance to prove his dominance in the industry, another stage to bask in admiration. Emma overheard the plans during a meeting and felt her heart tighten. She knew how ironic it was that David, the man who mocked Sophia's abilities, was about to show off a machine she could probably operate with her eyes closed. After the meeting, Emma approached Sophia quietly in the maintenance bay. The hum of machinery filled the space as Sophia polished the base of the helicopter. Emma hesitated, then said, He's going to demonstrate the chopper himself at the event. The one he teased you about. Sophia didn't react at first. Her hands kept moving in slow, even circles. Then she set the cloth down, looked out through the hangar doors at the sky, and smiled faintly. "Then maybe," she said, her voice soft but firm, "it's time." That night, Sophia stayed longer than usual. The hangar was quiet except for the ticking sound of cooling engines. She walked slowly between the aircrafts, her fingers grazing the smooth metal as though greeting old companions. She stopped beside the helicopter David would fly, her eyes reflecting the faint light above. Memories flickered, her hands gripping the controls in roaring winds, her voice steady over the radio, her heart racing as she guided soldiers to safety. The sky had once been her home, but life had forced her to land and stay grounded. When she finally turned to leave, her expression carried a quiet resolve. She didn't plan to reveal herself for glory or revenge. She simply knew that truth, when it arrives, doesn't need to shout. It just needs the right moment to rise. And that moment was coming soon. In a few days, the hangar that once echoed with laughter would fall silent in awe. The same people who saw a janitor with a mop would soon watch her take back the sky that had always belonged to her. The day of the grand event arrived with the kind of brightness that demanded attention. The Skyfleet hangar gleamed under the sunlight, banners fluttered, and the polished helicopters reflected every flash from the cameras. Reporters lined up beside investors and company staff, eager to witness David Carter's latest achievement. The air buzzed with excitement, the sound of conversations blending with the distant hum of engines warming up. David stood at the center of it all, dressed in his black pilot jacket, sunglasses glinting, smiling for every camera. He looked like a man who believed the world revolved around him. Sophia stood quietly at the far end of the hangar, partially hidden behind a maintenance cart. Her uniform was plain, her hands folded around the handle of her mop. No one paid attention to her. Why would they? She was just the cleaning lady, the one people often looked through rather than at. But her eyes followed every movement of David and the helicopter he bragged about, every flick of the switch, every boastful wave to the crowd. She knew that machine better than anyone in that room. David began his speech, his voice echoing across the hangar. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is the future of Skyfleet aviation. Our pride, our power, and proof that innovation has no limits." Applause erupted. He continued, charming his audience with talk of aerodynamics, luxury interiors, and speed records. When he noticed Sophia in the back, standing silently with her mop, something inside him couldn't resist. The pride that had once made him successful also made him foolish. With a smirk, he raised his voice and called out, "Still ready for that flight, Sophia? The offer still stands." Laughter rippled through the crowd like a wave. Some of the employees turned to look at her, expecting embarrassment or retreat. But Sophia didn't look away. She set her mop aside, her posture straightening, her eyes calm but unwavering. The laughter died down when she started walking forward, each step echoing softly against the polished floor. When she reached the open space near the helicopter, her voice was clear and steady. "If the offer still stands, Mr. Carter," she said, "then let's fly." The hangar went silent. The reporters stopped murmuring. Even the camera shutters paused for a beat. David blinked, his smirk faltering for the first time. But with dozens of eyes on him, his pride wouldn't let him back down. He chuckled nervously and gestured toward the cockpit. "Fine, let's see if you can even start it." Sophia didn't answer. She simply climbed into the helicopter with a grace that didn't belong to a cleaner. Her hands moved across the control panel in a rhythm that spoke of deep familiarity. She checked the gauges, adjusted the throttle, and flipped the master switch. Within seconds, the engine came alive with a roar that vibrated through the hangar. The rotors began to spin, first slow, then faster, slicing through the air with power and precision. The crowd gasped. David's face lost its color. The reporters scrambled to capture the moment as Sophia's eyes focused ahead, every motion exact and controlled. She didn't just start it, she owned it. The helicopter lifted smoothly off the ground, hovering in perfect balance before tilting forward into flight. She guided it upward with effortless confidence, circling the hangar with precision that even professional pilots struggled to maintain. Outside, The sunlight glinted off the spinning blades as the helicopter climbed higher, performing a flawless 360-degree turn before descending gracefully. People below shielded their eyes, watching in stunned silence as the woman they had dismissed as invisible now commanded the skies above them. Emma stood among the crowd, a proud smile spreading across her face. She had known the truth, but seeing it unfold was something else entirely. It was justice with wings. Sophia maneuvered the helicopter into a perfect landing. The skids touched the ground so gently that even the dust beneath them barely moved. As the engine slowed and the blades came to a stop, she unbuckled her harness, stepped out, and faced the silent audience. For a long moment, no one said a word. Then applause erupted like thunder. It wasn't polite clapping. It was awe, disbelief, and respect, all tangled together. David stood frozen, his mouth slightly open, the weight of humiliation finally sinking in. Reporters swarmed around him, microphones and cameras aimed like arrows. One voice cut through the noise. "Mr. Carter, is this the same woman you mocked earlier?" He couldn't answer. His mind raced back to that morning when he had turned her into a joke. Now, standing before him wasn't a janitor. It was a woman who had conquered the sky while he was still learning how to stand tall. Sophia didn't gloat or smile triumphantly. She simply looked at David and gave a small nod, the kind that spoke of dignity rather than revenge. Then she turned to the crowd, acknowledging their applause with quiet grace before walking past them, back toward her cart. The same mop that once made her invisible now seemed like a symbol of her strength, proof that greatness doesn't need a title, just courage. As she disappeared through the hangar doors, the crowd buzzed with excitement, whispering her name, replaying what they had just witnessed. And for the first time, David Carter, who had built an empire around pride, felt something entirely new. Not anger, not shame, but humility. The sky outside stretched wide and endless, the faint hum of the helicopter still echoing in the distance. Somewhere between the roar of engines and the silence that followed, everyone in that hangar learned a truth they would never forget. Sometimes the person you look down on is already soaring far above you. The sun dipped low behind the skyline, painting the glass walls of Skyfleet headquarters in soft shades of gold and amber. The noise from the earlier event had faded into distant murmurs, replaced by the quiet hum of evening. On the rooftop helipad, the wind carried the faint scent of jet fuel mixed with the calm of twilight. Sophia stood there alone, her eyes fixed on the horizon, watching the light fade over the city that had once looked down on her. The helicopter she had flown rested nearby, its blades still and gleaming under the dying sun. She stood beside it, not as a cleaner, not as a worker, but as herself, finally unmasked. Footsteps echoed behind her, slow and hesitant. David Carter appeared at the top of the stairs, no longer the confident CEO from the morning. His jacket was off, his shoulders slightly slumped, and, for once, there was no arrogance in his walk. He stopped a few steps away, unsure how to begin. "You could have embarrassed me worse," he finally said, his voice quiet but sincere. "You had the whole crowd on your side. You could have made me look small." Sophia turned her head just enough for him to see the calm in her expression. "Because true strength isn't about revenge, Mr. Carter," she replied. "It's about control." Her tone wasn't proud or cold. It was steady, like someone who had learned that peace was the final victory. David nodded slowly, absorbing her words. The wind rustled through the rooftop, lifting a few strands of Sophia's hair. For a moment, neither of them spoke. He looked at her, the woman he had mocked, and saw someone far greater than he had ever been. "I've met a lot of people in my life," he said softly. "Investors, politicians, pilots, engineers, but no one like you. You carry yourself like the sky belongs to you." Sophia smiled faintly. "The sky belongs to everyone who dares to reach it," she said. "You just have to remember that not everyone climbs from the same starting point." David took a breath and stepped closer, the sunset light glinting off the glass panels behind him. "I was wrong," he admitted. "About you, about people like you. I thought success was measured by how high I stood above others. You showed me it's about how high we can lift each other." He paused, then added, "I want you to stay. Not as a cleaner, as part of Skyfleet's future. We're opening a pilot training division and I want you to lead it. You have more skill and experience than anyone I've met." Sophia looked at him, her eyes reflecting both surprise and thoughtfulness. "A training division," she repeated softly, turning her gaze back to the helicopter. "You'd trust your company's next generation with me?" David smiled genuinely for the first time that day. "I'd trust them with the person who reminded me what leadership really means." Sophia considered it for a moment before replying. "I'll do it," she said finally, "but only on one condition." David raised an eyebrow, curious. "No one here works beneath anyone," she continued. "Titles, uniforms, paychecks, they shouldn't decide who deserves respect. We work together, not above one another." David nodded without hesitation. "Deal," he said, his voice steady and sincere. The tension that had once hung between them dissolved into something quiet and pure. Mutual respect. For the first time, they stood as equals, two people who had both learned something about themselves through humility. David looked at her, no longer seeing a cleaner or even an employee, but a symbol of the kind of strength money couldn't buy. As the wind swept across the rooftop, Sophia walked toward the helicopter, resting her hand lightly on its side. The machine seemed almost alive under the glow of sunset, a reminder of the life she had once left behind and had now reclaimed. The golden light framed her silhouette as she closed her eyes for a moment, feeling the calm of completion. She wasn't the same woman who had started this week quietly mopping floors. She was a pilot again, not because she flew, but because she had risen above everything that tried to ground her. David stood a few feet behind her, watching in silence. He knew he would never forget this moment, the humbling realization that the woman he had once mocked had become his teacher. The city lights began to flicker on below them, one by one, like stars awakening early. Sophia turned to him with a calm smile. "You should fly sometime," she said. "Not for show, but to feel small again. It helps you see how big the world really is." David chuckled quietly, not in arrogance but in gratitude. "Maybe you can teach me," he said. "If I'm lucky enough," Sophia gave a gentle nod. "We'll see," she replied. Then she turned back to the horizon, the wind brushing her hair as the last rays of sunlight kissed the skyline. Down below, the company that had once overlooked her name now whispered it with admiration. The story of the cleaning lady who flew the CEO's helicopter spread through the city, inspiring countless people who had ever been underestimated. As the camera of life pulled back from the rooftop, the scene froze on Sophia standing beside the helicopter, strong, calm, and free. Narrator. Sometimes, the people we underestimate carry the sky within them. For more stories like this, subscribe to Simply Stories.